This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 874, Your Salary is Not Your Self-Worth, and Why I Gave Myself Permission to Earn Less, Part 1, by Cait Flanders of CaitFlanders.com. And a happy 4th of July if you are in the U.S. I am Dan, I'm your host, and this is where I read to you from some of the best blogs on personal finance every weekday, including holidays. And today's article is a bit on the longer side, so I'm going to read the first half for you today and then finish it up tomorrow. So with that, let's get right to part 1 as we continue optimizing your life. Your salary is not your self-worth, and why I gave myself permission to earn less. Part 1 by Cait Flanders of CaitFlanders.com. It's been an interesting first year as a full-time freelance writer. For starters, I didn't even know that I'd still be out on my own at this point. My last day of work was June 26, 2015, and all I knew was that I had a bunch of cash saved up and at least 6 months of client work ahead of me. What would happen after 6 months? I could only imagine. Maybe I'd have another 6 months of work ahead of me, but maybe I wouldn't. Maybe all my clients would drop me. In that case, if I had to use a little bit of my savings, I would. And if I had to get a job, I would. Even if I just needed a little bit of stable income and I had to get a job at Starbucks, I would, and was prepared to do that. But I haven't had to do any of that yet, which is one way I can measure my success. In all my jobs before this, I would have instead measured my success by the size of the raise I got every year. When I was a teenager, I loved getting 25 cents an hour and 50 cents per hour raises. They proved I worked hard and deserved a little more money for my efforts. Once, I even told the owner of the coffee shop bakery I worked at that I was going to quit and go work somewhere I could make more money. She offered me $1 an hour more to stay because she couldn't afford to lose me. I was on top of the world. When I stepped into my first management position, I got a $4 an hour raise that made me feel like a freaking boss. Rightly so, I suppose, since I was one. In all the positions I earned hourly wages, getting a raise made me feel good, like people knew I was doing a good job and I was worth more money. But that mindset had to shift when I worked for the government. Let me preface this by saying it's not my former employer's fault. Like all unions, the government operates under pay grades and scales. Your position has a number. I was an 18, and there is a pay scale you move up each year where you're given a small raise essentially equivalent to the cost of living. I still liked getting those little boosts in my salary. They always helped, although I used to spend it all back in the day. But it wasn't a measure of how hard I worked, and I worked really hard at that job. I got to do what I went to school for, desktop publishing and print production. I worked with an amazing team, and I had managers who mentored and supported me. I should have been happy, and I was for a long time, until I found out that someone on my team who I felt was far less efficient and productive than I was, and really didn't care about the job, earned more than me. Things change when you see your coworkers' pay stubs. I wish that statement weren't true, but it is. I'm guessing this is every employer's worst nightmare too, that someone on your team will find out they make less money than someone else. Employers are probably terrified of people talking and figuring this stuff out, and they should be. Not because the employer has done anything wrong, but because it causes a tectonic shift in the foundation of your employee's happiness. Things change when you see your coworkers' pay stubs. And things really change when you find out you both started at the same time, but they were started at a step up on the pay scale than you. The reasoning? The other person had a little more professional experience. What wasn't understood at the time of hiring? I loved what I did and I was going to kick butt at my job. After that, I noticed that I started keeping a mental tally of how much work I did compared to this other person. Some weeks I produced as much as 300% more work. 240% was the average, but who's keeping track? Oh yeah. I was. We were on the same team, had the same job title, the same job description, and the same daily duties of which I knew I did more of, yet this person made more money than me, and it felt awful. Things changed after I saw my coworker's pay stub. As time went on, I grew more and more unhappy in my job. There were other things at play, and it didn't help that I felt stuck because a hiring freeze made it nearly impossible to find another job anywhere within the government. But at the end of the day, it simply felt awful to be stuck on a pay scale where I was compensated based on the date that I started and not the commitment and effort I put into my work. I didn't feel this way when I started working in the private sector. There, I earned annual raises that were based on my performance, and I had nothing to complain about. It helped that I was on the management team, but I truly did feel like I was being paid well, and I know the numbers only would have gone up if I had stayed. But my mindset shifted again after I joined the world of the self-employed. If you were reading this blog last July, you might remember that I started sharing how much I was earning each month. This is something I'd never done when I had a full-time job. I think I had shared what a few of my salaries were over the years, and you could have done the math to figure out what that looked like for me on a monthly basis, but I never specifically wrote, I made X dollars this month. Then, for whatever reason, I felt like I was supposed to share more numbers once I started working for myself. Some of that was an internal need, in that I felt like I needed to attach some numbers to how much I was spending, saving, etc. But it was also something that a large majority of my self-employed friends in the personal finance space did, so I felt like I had to follow suit. And the fact that I was making good money probably gave me the confidence to hit publish on those posts. I'm going to be very open about some numbers here, not because I want anyone to compare themselves to me, which is something you now know I've been guilty of doing too, but because I want to really be honest about my thought processes over the last year. I also think it's important to talk about how this stuff happens at all different salary ranges. To be continued. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled, Your Salary is Not Your Self-Worth, and Why I Gave Myself Permission to Earn Less, by Cait Flanders of CaitFlanders.com. And that should do it for today. Have yourself a happy and safe 4th of July if you're celebrating and listening in real time. And I'll see you back here tomorrow for the Friday show, where we're going to finish up this post and where your optimal life awaits.